Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Andrew always believed that 15 years of marriage meant something. They meant a shared history, trust built brick by brick, promises that would stand the test of time. At 42, he was a civil engineer at a mid-sized company in Charlotte, North Carolina, and his routine was predictable but comfortable. He woke up early, made coffee, went to the office, and came home expecting to find Jessica, his wife, ready to share dinner and talk about their day. But over the past 8 months, something had changed, first subtly, then unmistakably. Jessica, a human resources manager at a large corporation, started coming home later and later. The excuses were always the same: endless meetings, team happy hours, urgent projects requiring overtime. Andrew, trusting his wife, accepted them without question. After all, he also had long days at work. But there were signs he tried to ignore. Jessica stopped smiling when he walked into the room. She turned her phone away whenever a notification came in. She left the house smelling far too good for just another corporate meeting. She refused any kind of intimacy, citing exhaustion, stress, or headaches. The emotional distance between them grew like a silent chasm. The night that would change everything happened on an ordinary Friday in October. Andrew was in the living room, scrolling through restaurant options on his phone, thinking of suggesting a romantic dinner over the weekend. Jessica came home around 9, tossed her purse on the couch, and headed straight to the kitchen to grab a bottle of wine. Andrew stood up, hopeful, and walked over to her with an eager smile. "Jess, I was thinking we could go out tomorrow night, maybe that Italian place you like. What do you think? It's been a while since we've done something just the two of us." Jessica didn't even look at him as she poured the wine. She took a long sip, leaned against the counter, and finally turned to face him. Her expression was tired, mixed with something Andrew couldn't quite place: irritation, maybe, or worse, indifference. "Andrew, stop it," she said sharply, impatiently. He blinked, confused. "Stop what?" Jessica let out an exasperated sigh, as if explaining the obvious to a stubborn child. "Stop acting like we're interested in each other. You're just my roommate, okay? That's all. Don't bother me with these romantic dinner ideas and pretend affection." Her words hit Andrew like a bucket of ice water. He stood there, processing what he'd just heard. Roommate. She'd reduced 15 years of marriage to a convenient cohabitation. Shock gave way to humiliation, and humiliation quickly turned into a cold anger he'd never felt before. Jessica simply picked up her wine glass and went to the bedroom, leaving Andrew alone in the kitchen, heart racing, mind spiraling. For the next 3 days, Andrew couldn't get that phrase out of his head. It echoed during work meetings, while he drove, when he tried to sleep. He started noticing details he'd previously overlooked. Jessica always kept her phone face down. She quickly deleted messages. She wore an expensive perfume he didn't recognize. There were new clothes in her closet. Late at night, locked in the bathroom, she'd laugh softly while texting. Andrew wasn't the type to wait or plan things out carefully. His impulsive nature pushed him to act, and this time would be no different. The following Monday, during his lunch break, he called a coworker named Richard, who'd gone through a messy divorce 2 years earlier. "Rich, do you remember that private investigator who helped you with your case? I need his contact." Richard didn't ask questions. He just sent the number in a text. Andrew called immediately. The detective, a man with a deep, professional voice named Martin, answered on the second ring. Andrew explained the situation plainly, without beating around the bush. Martin listened in silence, then said he'd need 3 to 5 days to gather solid information. He asked for photos of Jessica, her car model, and approximate times she left and came home. Andrew provided everything. The wait was agonizing, but he kept up his normal routine, interacting with Jessica only when necessary. She barely noticed his presence anyway. On Thursday afternoon, Andrew got a call from Martin asking to meet at a discreet cafe downtown. When Andrew arrived, Martin was seated at a corner table with a brown envelope in front of him. The detective's expression was serious, almost sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Andrew. This kind of thing isn't easy to deliver." He slid the envelope across the table. Andrew opened it, hands trembling slightly. Inside was a series of high-resolution printed photos. The first showed Jessica stepping out of her car in front of a luxury hotel in downtown Charlotte. The second captured her next to a man in a sharp suit, gray at the temples, with an elegant bearing. They were smiling, standing far too close to be just colleagues. The third photo showed them kissing in the parking lot, his hands on her waist. The following images documented the couple entering the hotel lobby, stepping into the elevator, moments of intimacy that left no room for doubt. Martin slid a second set of papers across the table. "I identified the guy. His name is Trevor Lawson, CFO at the same company where your wife works. Married for 23 years, 2 adult daughters. From what I found, their affair started about 4 months ago. They always meet at the same hotel, every Tuesday and Thursday during extended lunch breaks, and sometimes at night when she says she's at happy hour." Andrew stared at the photos, chest tightening. This wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditation, routine, a parallel life built on systematic lies. He slowly closed the envelope, thanked Martin, paid for the service, and left the cafe with icy clarity. Andrew didn't need more proof. He wasn't going to spend weeks or months gathering additional evidence like some patient investigator. He was impulsive, and his decision was made. He got home before Jessica and spread the photos across the living room coffee table, arranged in chronological order like a criminal investigation board. He sat on the couch and waited. Jessica came home around 10, as usual. She walked in with her phone in hand, smiling at the screen as she typed. She didn't look up until Andrew spoke. "Want to tell me about Trevor?" His voice was calm, but there was a cutting coldness that made Jessica freeze in place. She slowly lifted her eyes, and only then noticed the photos scattered on the table. Her face went pale. "Andrew. I can explain," he gave a bitter, humorless smile. "Explain? Please, Jess. Explain it to me. Explain how you turned 15 years of marriage into a lie. Explain those hotel rendezvous while I was here thinking you were working. Explain how you had the nerve to call me your roommate while secretly building a life with another man." Jessica opened and closed her mouth several times, struggling to find words. It's not serious, Andrew. It was a mistake. I was confused, feeling alone. You neglected me, always focused on work, never paying attention to me." Andrew let out a short, dry laugh. "Neglected me? I'm just your roommate, remember? But roommates don't pay for 5-star hotels for each other, do they? They don't fund this comfortable life while being cheated on and humiliated." Jessica started crying, her face twisted in despair. She took a step toward him, but Andrew raised his hand, signaling her to stay back. "Don't come near me. You lost that right." She collapsed to her knees, sobbing loudly. "Please, Andrew, forgive me. I'll end it with him, right now, tonight. We can try again, I promise. I'll change, I'll be better. Please, don't throw away everything we built." Andrew looked at her without a trace of compassion. All the pain, humiliation, and anger from the past months had crystallized into unwavering resolve. "You already threw it away, Jessica. Not me. You chose this when you decided I wasn't enough. When you treated me like old furniture. When you lied to my face every single day. Tomorrow morning, I'm hiring a lawyer. I want a divorce." Jessica panicked, grabbing his legs and begging, promising anything. Andrew firmly pulled away, gathered the photos from the table, and went upstairs to the guest room, locking the door behind him. He heard Jessica crying for hours, but he didn't go back. The next morning, Andrew left early without speaking to her. He went straight to the office of a divorce attorney Richard had recommended. The lawyer, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, listened to his whole story and examined the photos with professional attention. "You've got a solid case, Andrew. Adultery confirmed with photographic evidence. In North Carolina, that can affect asset division and potential alimony agreements. We'll start the process immediately." Andrew signed the necessary documents and authorized Patricia to move forward. Divorce papers were served to Jessica 3 days later, at her own workplace, by a court officer. Andrew later heard through others that she'd broken down crying in her office, drawing everyone's attention. News of the separation spread quickly. What Jessica didn't expect was the second twist. Trevor, the elegant and confident lover, started feeling the pressure. His wife, a sharp attorney named Olivia, had noticed changes in his behavior and quietly launched her own investigation. When office gossip about Trevor and Jessica began circulating, Olivia confronted her husband with surgical coldness. She made it clear, either he ended things with his mistress immediately and entered couples therapy, or she would file for a brutal divorce that would leave him with nothing, including his pristine reputation and position at the company. Trevor, calculating and cowardly, didn't hesitate. He sent Jessica a cold message saying the affair was over, that it had been a mistake, and blocked her on all platforms. Jessica tried calling, texting from other numbers, even showed up at his office, but Trevor avoided her with relentless determination. She'd lost not only her marriage but also the lover she thought would be her future. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. The photos were irrefutable evidence, and Jessica had no way to contest them. Patricia secured a favorable asset division for Andrew, given the proven infidelity. The house was sold, and Andrew received a larger share of the proceeds. Joint accounts were closed. Mutual friends, once they learned the full truth, sided with Andrew. Jessica tried telling her version, that Andrew had been distant and cold, but the evidence spoke louder. She began to be seen as the villain of the story, and social isolation followed immediately. At work, though she wasn't formally fired, she felt judgmental stares, hallway whispers, and subtle exclusion from company social events. Trevor, protecting his own image, quietly spread the story that Jessica had made unwanted advances, further damaging her reputation. Andrew, meanwhile, faced difficult months. The pain of betrayal didn't vanish overnight. There were nights he woke up in a cold sweat, replaying the words, "You're just my roommate," and feeling the humiliation burn all over again. But he refused to sink. He started seeing a therapist specializing in relationship trauma. He joined a gym, not for looks, but to release the accumulated anger and frustration. He returned to hobbies he'd abandoned during the marriage, picked up his guitar again, joined a book club, and began weekend hikes with a group of friends he'd neglected over the years. The initial loneliness gave way to rediscovering himself. Andrew realized he'd lost himself trying to hold together a marriage that had been dead for months, maybe years. He'd been convenient, a roommate who paid bills, kept the house running, and sustained an illusion. Now, he was free. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Andrew was unrecognizable, not physically, but emotionally. There was a lightness in him that hadn't existed before, a genuine confidence. He moved into a modern apartment in a lively Charlotte neighborhood and decorated it exactly how he'd always wanted, without compromise or negotiation. He adopted a dog from a local shelter, a Labrador named Max, who quickly became his inseparable companion. He started going out with friends regularly, met new people, and even accepted a few dinner invitations from potential romantic interests, though without rushing into anything serious. Andrew had learned to value his own company, to stop depending on outside validation, and to recognize signs of disrespect before it was too late. Jessica, by contrast, faced the consequences of her choices. She tried reconciling with Andrew many times, sending long messages begging for forgiveness, waiting in his office parking lot, calling late at night crying and pleading for another chance. Andrew, firm and resolute, blocked all her contacts and instructed Patricia to make it clear that any attempt to approach him would be considered harassment. Jessica was truly alone. Trevor had fully returned to his marriage with Olivia, and the couple even posted a photo from a reconciliation trip to Europe on social media, a public declaration of healing. Jessica saw the picture and felt sick to her stomach. She'd been discarded, used, and abandoned by someone who never intended to leave his own family. The few friends who still spoke to her did so out of pity, not respect. Relatives, once they learned the details of her betrayal, either distanced themselves or made veiled comments about responsibility and consequences. Jessica moved to a small apartment on the other side of town, far from any place tied to memories. She lost weight in an unhealthy way, developed chronic anxiety, and her job performance declined to the point where she was quietly encouraged to look for opportunities elsewhere. 2 years after the divorce, Andrew was in a completely different place in life. He'd received a promotion at work and now led a team of engineers on major infrastructure projects. He met a woman named Claire at a professional conference, an intelligent, good-humored architect who, above all, was honest. They started meeting casually, without pressure, building a solid friendship that slowly deepened into something more. Claire knew Andrew's story, he'd told her everything from the start, and she respected his pace and natural caution as someone who'd been hurt before. One Sunday afternoon, as they walked Max through a park, Claire took Andrew's hand and said, "You know you deserve real happiness, right?" Andrew looked at her, smiled genuinely, and replied, "I'm starting to believe that." Jessica, meanwhile, remained stuck in the past. She obsessively stalked Andrew's social media, creating fake profiles just to see what he posted. She saw pictures of him smiling, traveling, living, and felt a corrosive mix of envy and regret. She tried a few short-lived relationships through dating apps, but none lasted. She carried the stain of her reputation and the insecurity of knowing she'd destroyed something valuable with her own hands. Trevor never crossed her path again, and when she heard he'd been promoted to executive vice president at the company, she felt a helpless rage. He'd walked away unscathed, protected by his position and by the smart wife who'd strategically chosen to forgive him. Jessica, however, bore the full weight of the consequences alone. The bitterest lesson came when Jessica, in a moment of deep weakness, wrote a long letter to Andrew, not sent digitally, but delivered in person to the lobby of his building. She confessed everything, the emptiness she felt, the regret consuming her, the painful realization that she'd thrown away the one man who truly cared about her. She wasn't asking for reconciliation, just forgiveness, a single word to ease her crushing guilt. Andrew received the letter, read it once, and calmly tore it up. He didn't respond, not out of cruelty, but because he understood that some doors, once closed, shouldn't be reopened. Some people only appreciate what they've lost when it's far too late to get it back, and that was the burden Jessica would have to carry. Andrew had learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and that moving forward doesn't require looking back. Their final fates reflected the choices they'd made. Andrew rebuilt his life on solid ground, self-respect, honesty, and authenticity. He refused to let betrayal define him, yet he didn't pretend it hadn't happened. He healed wisely, not bitterly. Trevor returned to his life of appearances, trapped in a marriage that survived not out of love, but convenience and fear of financial and social fallout. Olivia kept him on an invisible leash, and he accepted it, knowing he'd forfeited the right to full trust. Jessica faced the loneliness she'd created herself, painfully realizing that disrespect and betrayal don't just destroy relationships, they also erode the soul of the one who commits them. She paid the high price of reducing a devoted partner to a roommate, unaware she was discarding something irreplaceable. And Andrew, at last, understood life's quiet justice, that reclaimed dignity is worth more than any loud revenge, and that true triumph lies in rising stronger, wiser, and ready to build something genuinely valuable with someone who truly deserves it. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.